Hey, I'm Mark Matson from Progress Forge, and today I'm going to go over rapid AI prototyping. So what will I cover today? I'll cover an overview of what rapid AI prototyping is, and then how to set up a project in Claude or a similar AI tool, such as ChatGPT, and then also how to go from an idea to a prompt and then ultimately to the prototype. We will be using Replit as the tool that builds the prototype, and we'll also be using a bakery CRM ordering example. In addition, I'll try to do a comparison within Claude to make its own prototype in Claude so that we can compare and contrast some of the differences between a live prototype and just kind of a concept. And then also we can come up with and talk about some scenarios for AI prototypes and also talk about how that can work within a product trio and also with customer testing as well. So then we'll wrap up and just kind of, I'll try to recap things at the end. So to start off, what was the original inspiration for this video? So in the post Product Planning in the Age of AI, Finding the Right Balance, I shared a AI prototype example and I got some interest from this. And what I didn't do in here was I didn't go in depth on from the A to Z process of how to do this. And that's what this video will ultimately cover and go more in depth. So that's where this inspiration came from. And then what about the bakery ordering example? So in 3 questions to guide product decisions, talking about frameworks and prioritization in product and taking product ideas and answering key questions, came up with a practical example in the post about online ordering for bakeries. So the 3 questions, what problem are we solving, who are we solving it for, and why now, are answered in this example. And so this will actually be the guide to take the idea and essentially the framework and bring it over into Claude and then ultimately over into building the prototype. So let's go over to Claude and I'll share a little bit about what I mean when I'm talking about setting up a project. Now this can apply to ChatGPT as well because they have the concept of projects within ChatGPT. In Claude, I'm actually going to be using this as an example because I like how the project knowledge works here, and I'll share a little example. Now, a side note, you can still do this process of AI prototyping without having access to the projects feature within ChatGPT or Claude or similar tools, but for this example, it works a little better, and I'll share why. So in projects, there's a concept of project knowledge. So you can upload documents to train this project on this specific topic. Now in this topic, I'm specifically focusing in on Replit Agent MVP. So this is a project that we can use to build MVP ideas and prompts and scoping that out before we jump into Replit. And so let's go ahead and I'll show you briefly some of this content here. So this came from a public YouTube video that was recorded by the Replit team on how to work with the agent. So a great source, right, on how to train this project. And so just turned it into a text document and added it in here. Similar to here, this comes from the Replit knowledge base. And it essentially is a distilled version of the knowledge base on how to work with Replit Agent, how to work with Replit Assistant, and some of the guidelines to consider. And one thing I'll call out right now is that some of the best practices, and one of the things that I like that it put in here, is a focus on desired outcomes rather than specific implementations. Now that's important project knowledge for this project, and you'll see why in just a minute. So now let's go ahead and take this information. What problem are we solving? Who are we solving it for? And why now? This is the example of bakers, the bakery, of online ordering for bakeries. So I'm going to copy that in there, right over into Claude. And I have another prompt. You don't have to have this exact one. However, this prompt that I'm going to put in here is a good starter, essentially just saying, what is this information? It actually gives some context to Claude. It's essentially saying, look at this and put together a prompt that we can give Replit Agent to start building a prototype. So then when we give this information to Claude, it will look at the project knowledge and say, okay, what are we doing here? So let's try it out. We'll give Claude a chance to digest this information and put together instructions that we can give to Replit Agent. And if we don't like what it comes up with, or we want to iterate on that, we can jump right into the chat and do so. But for the example of this video, I'll keep it simple and I'll just use what it gives us. So you can see that it came up with a really good project overview. This is helpful for Replit Agent to understand the context of what we're trying to do, some core features, and this is great for a prototype. And I like how you can see, going back to those best practices, it didn't get very specific on technical requirements. It kept it pretty high levels, what I would call it, instead of giving it specific instructions on technology, tech stack, and things to use. And even some bonus nice to have features, which is interesting, project structure, and then also some notes. So all of this context is really helpful to copy over into Replit. So let's jump over into Replit and see what we can build. All right, so we're over here in Replit, and I'm going to just paste in what we got from Claude Project. And you can see that when you put more than a few paragraphs in here, it generally will paste in as a text file, and that's not a problem. It's just giving it the full context. If you only type a little bit of content in here, you can use the improved prompt feature. But in this case, it's not really a big deal. We'll just start building. And then essentially what's going to happen now, and I'll zoom out on this for just a moment so that you can see the full picture here, is Replit is now going to look at this information. The agent is going to digest it, consider options, and think about it. And then it's going to propose, and you'll see that here, what to build for this prototype. Now this is focusing on an outcome and not necessarily the technical pieces, but Replit Agent is going to suggest the tech stack, which is great. So it's going to give us this initial prototype. I recommend starting with just building the initial prototype first. You can add features later. If you start checking too many boxes, you might start running into issues very quickly. So let's just approve the plan and start. And what's really fun is Replit will right away just start building what we scoped out and what we approved. And I'm going to just let this full process show here so that you can get the full context of what's happening and you can get an idea of how this works. So you can see what's happening at this time is it's creating all of the files. And it's creating the project structure for this app. So it's writing the code, what it sees based off of the information and outcomes that we want, what it should build. So Replit Agent is taking this information, creating a prototype design, prototype structure to make it actually usable. You can see some of the files that it's created that make sense, such as order form, the theme, that's for the design, the app itself. And it's creating these all in the progress view so you can watch it if you want to. Now for non-technical people, you might not fully understand what's going on. And even for a technical person, the code is being generated so quickly that you might not be able to quite understand what's happening. What you can do with the Replit Assistant, which I'm not going to necessarily show in this video, is you can chat with the app and ask it questions. How does this work? Can we tweak that? So forth. So what it's doing is it's also installing packages and configuring the server. And in doing this, what it does is it allows the app to be functional. So let's go ahead and see what Replit Agent asks us. How do you find the order form? Is it easy to fill out? So it's asking us a usability question, which is really interesting. So I would say this is a very basic prototype. I think anyone would agree with that. Of course, you can right away start customizing things and making different theme changes. With a prototype like this, though, it actually looks pretty usable. The basic details of name, email, phone, a birthday cake, it knows the context. This is for a bakery, quantity, customization details, and order instructions. And then selecting a pickup date, that totally makes sense. So let's go ahead and actually test it out and see how it goes. I'll fill out the details and then we'll try it. All right, so I pre-filled the details and let's go ahead and test this out. So you can see what I filled in. Let's try placing the order. Now there's an error right there right away, and that's to be expected with a simple prototype like this. But that's okay because we can actually go into Assistant and you can start fixing that. Now, I'm not going to necessarily go into the full details of how to do that, but as you can see, this built a very simple prototype in a short amount of time. I'll actually show you what it looks like when we open this in the browser. So you can open this in a temporary URL in a browser, so a temporary web page, and you can look at it. Let's make a couple of simple customization changes, and let's just say that our brand is a green brand, green color brand, and we want to change. So it changes the buttons. You can change the theme. You can change tints. I'm doing this on the fly, so it might not be exactly right. And you can go ahead and go into the agent itself and start customizing. You can go into Assistant. And there's various reasons for that to use Assistant versus Agent, but I'm not going to go into that for this video. So now let's go back to Claude and do a comparison. Like I said at the very start of this video, we would do a comparison of what Claude envisions for the prototype. And to do that, it's very simple. I'll go into Claude and I'll just say, please create an example prototype of what you envision for this outcome. So let's go ahead and give Claude a chance to generate a prototype. Now I didn't give it any specific technical instructions, but it defaulted to React. You can say, please use this tech stack or this example, and it will do that. React within Claude, you can actually see, and it's coincidental, in Replit, it generated and used React as well, I noticed, so that we would be able to use that and bring the code over into Replit if we wanted to, if we like this prototype better. So let's go ahead and see what Claude comes up with. All right, so you can see that Claude has finished generating. What I do like is it gives some context of the features and essentially what it built, so that you have the context. You can start beginning in here, chatting in here and saying, let's tweak this, let's change that. But right away you can tell that the design from the prototype that Replit built is probably a little bit more spot on with something that we would go with. But you can see that you can customize item types, pickup date time, that's a good thing to have, a more specific time, and then submit the order. The difference within Claude, and let's see what the admin view is. Okay, so admin view is interesting because it shows the order management. This is more in alignment with what we actually said in our 3 questions of what problem are we solving, who are we solving it for, and why. One of the problems and challenges is that they were just getting a bunch of orders through the phone. They were having a hard time organizing them, and having an admin view to get order management and filtering options is spot on. It's exactly what would be needed. So what you could do, this is a preview view, you can actually take this code, this is usable code, you can copy this, download it, you can bring it over into any AI prototyping tool and say, I like this design, I like this part of it, I like this part of this component, let's bring this into our overall design and the overall app. The good thing about Replit and using a tool such as Replit is it actually builds the entire app for you. So it is actually a usable prototype. So once you get to design and prototype an app where you want, you can use it and you can deploy it out. You can put it on a custom domain even if you want to, and you could get it in front of actual customers or share with the team. So within Claude, this is not a usable prototype from within here, not yet anyways. Who knows what will happen in the future, but you can use this as a inspiration, but it's not necessarily a usable prototype. You can publish it, but it's not necessarily going to have a back end with a database and be able to deploy to a custom domain at this time. So let's take this back for just a moment and think about, now that we've compared how Claude can create a prototype with and how it compares with Replit, just remembering that one is live and usable, the other one is just more of a concept. What are some of these scenarios that you can use prototypes for? Of course, somebody can use it for an infinite amount of examples, but in the product management context, one of the key things that you can do is you could take a customer idea, a feature idea, or an improvement to something, or a new concept, and quickly spin up a prototype, and then share it with the product trio, which would be the product manager, an engineer, and a designer. Now, if you don't have a product trio on your team or in your company, it might be a different mix of people. However, what you can do is you can say, hey, I know that we have this problem we're trying to solve for a customer, and here's just an idea. It takes all of the things into account and all of the things that you want to test. And what if we get this in front of some customers and get their reaction in either a discovery call, or you could do some live testing, especially if you build a live prototype. And this is a quick way, and that's why I'm calling this rapid AI prototyping. Is this always the best way to go about doing it? Not necessarily. Is it another tool in our toolbox as a product manager? Absolutely. And it's kind of a fun and interesting way to take an idea, a problem that we're trying to solve for customers, and actually get something tangible that you can test, you can work on, you can tweak. And of course, this would be like a very early MVP stage. You would need to work with an engineering team to improve and iterate over time. But as part of the product life cycle, this could be very powerful in the early stages to get a prototype out there, to take something from just a concept or an idea to actually doing some discovery, and then potentially planning out some build and getting something ready for production. So I hope this is useful and helpful for those that might be interested and might not have seen the process from A to Z. There are a lot more details, as you can imagine, that you can do and go more in depth. But at least this gives you an idea of what is possible today. And if you have any questions or ideas for future videos such as this, let me know and I'm happy to put that together. Thank you.